Welcome back, true believers and spectacular Spidey fans, to another very intense Spider-Man PS4 related video because of what you're seeing in the title of it saying my top 5 flaws with Spider-Man PS4 after I got to play the game 5 times at E3 2018. And if you have seen my previous YouTube videos that I've uploaded really recently, I got to play the game twice in the public area for the Marvel Spider-Man booth. Once where I just got to finally play the game after waiting 2 years. The second time, I actually got to fight Shocker and do more side missions in the city. The third time, I got to play alongside of Brian Intihar in the VIP PlayStation PR Lounge. The fourth time, I got to play with John Bubniak, Peter Parker's character model himself, at the public Marvel Spider-Man booth, and I got to also interview him there as well. And the fifth time, I just did it before leaving E3 and just getting my final scope of the game and just seeing what a mind-blowing experience it was, and just being able to play it for the first time was amazing. Now, of course, as you guys know me, I love this game, and I love Insomniac, and I love Marvel, and everything that they're doing with this game is flat out awesome. However, there are a lot of things that they can still really improve with the overall aspect of the game to make the best Spider-Man game possible. Now, for me personally, I think the thing that they have nailed the most is the combat. I think the way on how they're dealing with the combat, with the punches, the dodge mechanics, using your webs and different gadgets, and also trying to use traversal in the combat as well, is really fluid. But my main priorities in regards to the flaws that I have are actually relating to the traversal aspects of the game. So, as you can see, I have my top 5 flaws with the game, and the very first one I would have is with the sprinting. So, of course, we know for a fact that Spider-Man PS4 has a sprint mechanic, which is something that I love in all Spider-Man games, or at least the main two that have it is Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man 3, and they're also putting that same mechanic in Spider-Man PS4, which is awesome. And of course, if you have seen the interviews with all the Insomniacs and all the coverage, they basically describe the controls, and also if you've watched Game Informer's coverage, they talked about the controls and seeing how R2 is pretty much your go button. So what that means is that if you press and hold R2, and I can tell you for a fact since I played the game, if you press and hold R2 on the ground, you will only sprint and also do parkour if you are running towards certain objects in the city, or even wall run, and that's also how you get up on the wall in the first place to either wall crawl or wall run. Then in the air, if you press and hold R2, that is when you start to web swing. And that mechanic of mixing parkour, sprinting, and web swinging all in one button, I think is really cool. However, the one problem I have with it is that the sprinting is a bit slow, whereas if you don't press and hold R2 when you're on the ground, Spider-Man pretty much does a little jog, and then if you're pressing and holding R2, you'll run faster. However, it's supposed to be a sprint button, not just a slight run button. So even though he does run while he's in the city, he can either sprint up walls or just parkour over objects. The sprinting does feel a bit slow for Spider-Man. In Spider-Man 2, you sprinted really fast. In Spider-Man 3, if you wore the black suit, you sprinted extremely fast. Here, Spider-Man's been in the job as Spider-Man for 8 years, so you would think that he would be a bit more accessible and a bit more stronger and more athletic when trying to be faster when trying to get around the city. He still is really fast when you're swinging, however, when you are actually trying to sprint on the ground, he is a bit slow. And Brian Intihar and the rest of the Insomniac team have said that you can upgrade Spider-Man with the traversal and speed mechanics and speed maneuvers, and also when you're also mixing and matching different things like parkour, swinging, web zipping, wall running, all on the same type of momentum with traversal, you will start to build up more and more momentum to gain more speed when trying to get around the city. However, when you are sprinting, you still sprint at the same speed, continuously pressing and holding R2. So even though that is one slight flaw, I do hope that it's either with an upgrade or they just update the sprint mechanic already, that you can hopefully sprint a bit faster when trying to get around New York City, because New York City is really big to explore, and Spider-Man is supposed to be this really fast-paced character, and while you are really fast-paced when you do swing and zip around the city, when you're on the ground, sprinting should feel just a bit faster for someone like Spider-Man. So that's my very first flaw with the game. Very small, nothing that big, but still something that I hope that they can just add upon. My second flaw is actually with the parkour of the game itself. Usually that would be like the biggest flaw of the game if I were to list these flaws in order of most concerning to least concerning, but we're starting with least concerning to most concerning. And for me personally, I already think that the parkour mechanic in the game is really well done. What you do is that you press and hold R2 while you are trying to run over an object, and that way when you go toward the object, you will do a parkour maneuver over it, around it, next to it, under it, anything like that, and it's really fluid. However, I really hope that there are more animations when it comes to the parkour and try and add a bit more complexity when trying to traverse around New York City. So when I played the game, you have the option to web zip, web tunnel, or parkour over objects, and of course web swing or wall run. However, when parkouring, that's the main mechanic that I was the most excited for in the game, is actually parkouring. And if you've seen my videos, I didn't really get to do and show off the parkour when I was playing the game the other 4 times I got to play it, but when I was playing the game with John Bubniak and my 5th time, which I didn't record on my YouTube channel, I did actually get to try out some parkour maneuvers in the city. You can vault over air vents, over some signs. You can do it while you're on top of little like antennas on the top of the Empire State Building, trying to get up the Empire State Building, trying to get across the entirety of different complex structures on top of rooftops with different things on top of it, like chairs or benches, or trying to get next to people who are on the top of rooftops just talking. You can try and parkour through them. It's really cool, but all you do is press and hold R2. However, like I said previously, they did say that there are upgrades when it comes to the traversal when swinging, and hopefully parkouring. We don't know for sure if that is going to be in the game with upgradable parkour, but I do really hope that you can upgrade the parkour in this game, because even though there are lots of animations that you can do just by pressing and holding R2, it would be nice if you can actually try and mix and match button presses while parkouring to try and give the player more in-depth controls when controlling a really, really fast-paced and agile character like Spider-Man. So those are my first 2 flaws. The sprinting is a bit slow and the parkour is a bit simple. That's basically what I'm trying to say, is that the parkour is really simple when it comes to controlling it in the game. So I do hope that they add some more layers and more depth when controlling the parkour, or just add some upgrades to it, because I think that would be really, really nice. My third flaw of the game is actually relating to the web zipping. So in the game, while you're swinging, you can go and swing and then press and hold L2 and R2, tap it at the same time to zip to a point and then launch off. That is great. However, there is another form of zipping just by pressing X when swinging. And the momentum that that gives is kind of breaking. It's still really, really fun when swinging, going down, getting this momentum, going up, pressing X to launch off your web line, and then you can do more acrobatic tricks and all that type of stuff, and then you can launch yourself by pressing and holding L2 and R2, and then press X to jump off a point while going back into a wall run and doing parkour. That is awesome. However, there is a mechanic while you are in the air and you press X, and that continues to go and increase your momentum by zipping towards something. And you can either zip one web line or another web line or 2 web lines at once to try and zip to a certain place that you're trying to get to, and it's really, really cool. However, sometimes the webs don't attach to buildings or different objects in the city. I know that's crazy to say, and don't kill me, because I love this game and I love everything that Insomniac is doing with it, but sometimes when I was playing the demo, not the full game, but the demo of the game that isn't fully released yet, sometimes when he would zip on an object or zip towards an object or do an animation when trying to zip towards something, the webs would sometimes not attach to the object, or it would be a little bit away from it. So here's like an edge of a building, here's the web, and you zip, and then the web kind of reaches here. It doesn't fully attach to the object, not completely, but it's still really, really fun to do. And if you mix and match your parkour, swinging, traversal, all that awesome stuff together, you'll get the hang of it really, really fast. However, when you try and do that one zip mechanic by pressing X, trying to zip to different objects to get more boosts when swinging, or just trying to go faster in the air, it sometimes doesn't attach to buildings, and sometimes it can cut off your momentum when swinging and wall running. And also doing things like the web tunnel, which I'm going to bring up soon. But mainly when zipping, it sometimes isn't that fully incorporated properly into the traversal. I really, really like what the idea is behind it, which is trying to be the web zip from Ultimate Spider-Man, where you get a big boost by going forward. That's what it's trying to do. However, sometimes it's either a bit too slow, or the webs don't attach to objects. I love the mechanic, but I really, really hope Insomniac can adjust that by the time the game comes out in September, which I'm sure they can. So with those out of the way, my second to last point is actually with the web tunnel, like I just mentioned. So there is a mechanic in the game, like you've seen in Game Informer's coverage, and this clip right here, which I'm going to play, is you can go straight through an object by shooting 2 webs and pulling yourself through a really narrow crevice or section of a building or a water tower or whatever, and you can do this maneuver called the web tunnel and try and do really, really cool maneuvers afterwards by swinging, wall running, all that cool stuff, and it looks incredible. However, like you just saw from that clip right there, Spider-Man is pretty much trying to go to this water tower. He then webs tunnel through the water tower. However, it looks like he's about to go on the left side of it instead of straight through it, and that kind of cuts the camera angle of Spider-Man trying to get through the web tunnel really immediately, and then goes straight through it with no, I guess, physics or anything with that. It kind of looks like he's just kind of quickly going there, you know, like he's going, he's swinging, he zips, and then he aligns himself perfectly with the web tunnel instead of just, I don't know, traversing through it or zipping even another angle to it. Because what he does, he swings through the left side when he could just web tunnel through the right side of the water tower. It looks really cool, and you can do that throughout the city through certain things like the subway stations or different parts of the, you know, the metal object or the, you know, the construction object that you see in the Game Informer footage. That looks really cool. However, it still feels a bit stiff and kind of not physics, not implementing the physics of the swinging and the gravity of when Spider-Man's trying to get around the city. It looks amazing, and it feels really fun to do. However, as you can see, it still looks like they need to work on that just a bit more, and I also hope that there is more animations when it comes to making the web tunnel feel more various and trying to get through different objects in different ways. I'm sure that they will, because Brian Intar and the Insomniac team have said that they are going to implement way more animations in the combat and the swinging, so I'm not worried about that at all. I just really hope that the web tunnel is fixed by the end of the game when it comes out September. Now, before I get to my final flaw of the game, I'm going to bring up a few honorable mentions. And remember, Brian Intar did say it's absolutely fine if you critique the game with constructive criticism and just give your feedback if you don't like something about the game. That way Insomniac and Marvel can give the best Spider-Man game possible, and that's what we all want, and that's why I believe that they're going to do a great job. But basically, those were the main aspects of the traversal with my 4 flaws, and then my 5th flaw is also relating to the city of the game and just the overall aesthetic of the game. But honorable mentions are just relating to some things I wish were in the game that they're not. So one thing is obviously Peter Parker free roam. They have obviously said that you can play as Peter Parker in certain sections of the game, and you can mainly traverse around the city as Spider-Man, and traversing around the city as Spider-Man is one of the coolest things ever in this game, and that's what a lot of people are going to do in the game regardless. They don't care about the story or the combat. The main thing that they care about is the swinging when it comes to a Spider-Man game, and I think this game did a really great job of nailing the swinging, and I do think it did beat Spider-Man 2's swinging. However, I do wish, as another way to kind of up the ante when it comes to free roaming, if you could possibly free roam as Peter Parker in the streets of New York and then try and switch between Peter and Spider-Man in an alleyway. It's really cool, because there are moments in the game where you can just walk on the streets as Spider-Man and say hi to civilians, and I was thinking the entire time while doing this, it'd be so cool if you could do this as Peter, because Peter can go up and interact with civilians or go do things at his job, which I'm assuming is that he's working at Oscorp because of a certain ad that appears in the Daily Bugle newspaper, which I'm going to talk about in another video. But mainly, if you could actually go up to civilians as Peter and do things in the city as Peter, I would have personally liked that. It's okay that it's not in the game, but still, that's just a minor flaw that I wish was in the game, but it's not. And then the second honorable mention is actually the fact that the overall just part of the game where you can actually just see all the things in the city, do tons of crazy stuff, but sadly, it's only in the main island of Manhattan. That's the biggest problem, is that the one whole island of Manhattan is the only explorable part of the game. However, again, the map of New York City is 4 to 6 times bigger than that of the map of Sunset Overdrive. However, there are parts in the game where you could think that you could go over to a different island of New York, but you can't. You can only explore the main island of Manhattan. It's huge, though. Central Park is huge. The entirety of different districts that are in the game, you can explore all these different areas, and the one area that we all got to swing around in the demo is already huge as it is, so I'm absolutely fine with that. However, in this huge next-gen Spider-Man game, I personally think it would have been nice for the ability to go over to the other islands in the city. And that's just the last honorable mention that I have for the list of flaws. And the very last flaw, and this is the biggest flaw in my opinion of the game, is that the civilian AI is a bit off. So what I mean by that is Spider-Man can go do a car chase, fight some enemies in the street, and specifically one thing that I awesomely got to do when playing with Brian Intihar is I was walking through the street, and then all of a sudden people out of nowhere just started to attack Spider-Man. There were criminals in the crowd that were attacking Spider-Man, and that looked so cool seeing that on screen and in the game. It was awesome, because I wasn't expecting something like that to happen, just a random crime, literally just jump scaring you out of nowhere, and that was so cool. However, afterwards, and this goes for every mission where you can do a car chase, stop bombs, fight enemies, do races, all this type of stuff. When civilians see Spider-Man, some of them don't really act at all, and they did say that some civilians are just like, oh, whatever, it's Spider-Man, I don't care. However, when you jump into a crowd, they will freak out and kind of, you know, flip out on Spider-Man like, whoa, that was crazy, Spider-Man just landed near me, and that's really, really cool. However, sometimes when you high-five them or salute them, they don't really do anything, they just keep walking, or they don't really look at Spider-Man even, and their faces are sometimes kind of blank. They don't really have any emotions going into them. However, again, this is a demo of the game, and the final game releases in less than 3 months, but I did see some civilians that weren't really reacting that properly to Spider-Man in the city, doing cool stuff like being on walls or fighting enemies and stuff like that. I'm sure that Insomniac and Marvel will absolutely fix that, and they have already said that they're already trying to fix tons of different stuff in the game, and like they said, they're going to try and work on the traversal until they can't work on it anymore. But I know for a fact that everything I got to play at E3 was breathtaking. I'm so honored that I was actually able to play the game at E3, and I know for a fact that Insomniac and Marvel are going to deliver the greatest Spider-Man experience ever made, and these are just some of my little nitpicks of the game, just trying to make it that much better for us to enjoy. But I already know for a fact they're going to do a great job and give us a great game on September 7th. But anyways, guys, those are my 5 flaws of Spider-Man PS4 when I got to play the demo 5 times at E3. Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you were not able to go to E3, what did you think of the footage that you saw on YouTube with the Shocker fight and the swinging and the combat? Or if you did get to go to E3, like some of the other Spidey Squad members like Amazing Lucas and Khaled B and the PlayStation Bra, what did you think of playing the game for the first time? What did you think of all the mechanics that Insomniac and Marvel implemented within the traversal? I'm in love with it. I think the combat is already great. I think I love everything they're doing with the combat. It's just the traversal that I hope that they improve, and they already said that they are going to. But anyways, guys, those are all my thoughts on this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay spectacular, Spidey fans. Peace out.